What is good, guys? It's Ray J back with another video, and this one will break down what's going on with Tesla stock, what you should be watching for moving forward. I'm also going to talk about CPI, which is going to be dropping for tomorrow, and why it's going to cause a very big move for the markets and also for Tesla, in my opinion, and how you should be going about this from a trading perspective. Before breaking things down about all this information, before I talk about what the news just said about Tesla and etc., and break down SPY and Tesla for you guys, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Tesla was down 0.6%, or at least it is down as of right now. And for the time being, it's doing something very similar to what I told you. I told you guys we make it this like pop near the open. We popped to about just under 271. I said we could go as high as like 272, maybe reject around there. So we went a little bit lower than expected, but then it ended up getting the rejection as expected. Came right back up before getting another rejection. And I told you guys we'd likely just see a very boring sideways action for the majority of the day for Tesla. That's basically what happened. We were just very sideways, very, very boring. We started off rejecting off the 200 EMA two times around before coming back down. And now we're rejecting off the 50 EMA. So watch that as a resistance level. And so far, Tesla's looking relatively weak compared to the markets because we had some bearish news that came out. The numbers for China are looking pretty weak. I reported this in the morning. The new registrations are very low compared to what we saw last week. We got like 17,000 last week. And then for this week, it was about like 3,200 or something. So big drop in the Chinese registrations for the time being. Not the end of the world. Does not guarantee anything for the next deliveries. It's just worth noting. Then on top of this, we saw a large drop in the used electric car value of the Model 3, which is down like 30%. And this is likely because of the overall market, supply and demand, and simultaneously Tesla's price cuts, which are causing this one to drop as well. Tesla cut prices a lot, and this is making people very cautious about Tesla's margins. We can see right over here the Model 3 is leading the price drop with a whopping 30% drop in value since the high of June 2023. So right here, the average price in June of 2023 for the Model 3 was about 37,000, and then it's down about, compared to like June 2022, it's actually down about $16,000. That's a 30+% drop. The second largest one was around the Model X, which saw another big drop, about 21.3% drop from June of 2022. And this is based off the average price of June 2023, just that data alone. We can see Teslas are making the large majority of these in the top 5. That's very important to note. Is it the end of the world? Not necessarily, but I'm just noting this because the price cuts could be eating into the margins, and this is affecting their used cars as well. So I just wanted to put this out there. It's very important that we are aware of this. I'm going to be a little bit cautious when it comes to going into Tesla's earnings now with all this news dropping. Just be very careful. But we have about a week or a little bit over a week until Tesla's earnings comes out. Until then, let's talk about the next big catalyst, and that's going to be the CPI report. So the CPI report is coming out on Wednesday, which is tomorrow at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time. So if you're on the West Coast, it's going to be at 5:30 a.m. But for people on the East Coast in New York time, it's going to be 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. Make sure you are ready for this. This is very important because it's going to be 1 hour before the market opens. CPI and core CPI are going to be coming out. Now, you have to remember that most of retail are not going to be trading during the pre-market, okay? Not during the open hours. It's not until the open hours, I mean. So that means the last opportunity for a lot of retail investors to start securing profits on their options, on their trades, and etc., to start exiting positions is going to be on Tuesday, which is today. So this is going to be your last opportunity to secure profits on those calls, do anything like that, secure profits on puts if you're shorting something. Do that today unless you want to risk holding them overnight, because the market's going to make a big move during the pre-markets tomorrow before the market even opens. So please be ready for that. Now, when it comes to the way I'd position this, I'm not giving any financial advice when I say this. I'm just going to tell you what I'm doing. I was playing calls on a lot of different plays today, like Coinbase was a good one, Meta too, Amazon as well. Amazon had Prime Day, of course, and finally SPY. And then I took profits on almost everything except for some SPY calls. I'm going to just hold just a couple of them just for fun overnight. But that's a very, very small position compared to how much I actually trade with. And when I do hold things overnight on days like this, just for fun as a YOLO, it's just a risk I'm willing to take. I'm willing to lose all of that money. To me, it wouldn't really matter since that would still be, just a very small loss if I were to take the loss. And I'm well aware of what the risk is. And I believe it's very important that you are aware of the risk as well. So remember, you're not going to get an opportunity like this. This is your last chance the next couple of hours to secure profits on those options, unless you want to hold overnight. But if you hold overnight, it's risky because CPI is going to cause a very big move. I will talk more about CPI maybe in another video, the next video that's coming out. There are a lot more details to break down about involving the Fed. But so far, the market's very optimistic approaching it. The Dow Industrials are up about 1.3%. SPY or the S&P 500 is up about 0.6%, with the Nasdaq kind of like falling behind, only up like 0.5%. So we're seeing a big shift in the markets. Tech is starting to slow down just a little bit. We will see how it ends up being impacted by earnings. However, looking at CPI, the blue line right here is CPI. It's on a big decline, so there's a good chance CPI is going to be decent. However, with core CPI, it's kind of sticky around this area. The purple line right here is core. That is CPI inflation without including food and energy. When you exclude those two factors, you can see there's a big difference in the way CPI is looking. So be very careful with all this data dropping. I believe CPI is going to be decent, which is why I'm once again willing to hold calls. But for core, I know it's risky, but I think it's going to be aligned with expectations. That's just my prediction. I could be completely wrong if it's hot. The market could get a rug pull, so just be very careful. But I'm leaning more in the direction of the market holding up and maybe even popping off this data, because so far the market's very optimistic. Now, what else has been optimistic for CPI would be what Janet Yellen said. She mentioned that she went to China to stabilize the relationships between the US and China, which could help to further ensure better supply chains and other factors like that. Supply plays a big role in how demand is issued and how we're keeping up with demand, which dictates prices, right? So we want the US to have good relationships with a lot of different countries, regardless of like what we think of them. I am well aware of the politics and things like that. I'm just stating that from an economic standpoint, we want stability and we want to be able to trade and outsource to help bring in more prices that are lowered and simultaneously enough supply to keep up with our demand. So far, this was a good step in the right direction. Janet Yellen went there. You could think whatever you want of her, that's fine. But the bottom line is this is important for all investors to know. This is going to likely or possibly help with high CPI. That's one real possibility. Anyways, when it comes to Tesla, what's going on with it? It's now testing support. It has some at like 266. The next major one's going to be 265. If 265 breaks, it's going to drop even lower to like 262 possibly, but maybe not today. I mean, I don't really see that happening. I don't think it's going to drop that hard unless something like bad comes in the news. The news that came out is why Tesla's underperforming compared to the market, but it's not that horrible. From this point on, Tesla may remain kind of sideways, respecting a downtrend, rejecting off the 50 EMA. But just be careful because remember, there's nothing wrong with securing profits on options. I'm not referring to shares, by the way. I'm still holding on to my long-term shares on Tesla, Apple, and many different companies. But I'm just referring to options, day trading, swing trading, and things like that. I secured most profits on almost everything for options. I'm only holding a very tiny position on SPY overnight just for fun. But I'm willing to lose the money just in case, and I know what the risk is, and I want you guys to do the same thing. Be well aware of the risks. All right, so for Tesla, all right, this thing could try to make its way up to about 268 and retest this like 50, but then what I'm thinking is it's just going to go back and forth between 266 and 268, not really do anything, so it's not really worth trading at this point on. It's just going to trade sideways for the majority of the day, and then we're going to see what happens tomorrow. So in my video where I said a huge move is coming for Tesla, yes, a huge move is going to be coming tomorrow. This is just Tesla getting tight and getting ready for a much larger move. My gut tells me it's going to be to the upside, but just to be safe, always be prepared for anything. All right, if it breaks below 265, we're going to sink down to 262. If it breaks above 270, this thing can fly all the way up to like 275 or so over the next couple of trading days. But we're going to have to wait and see what CPI causes. Be very patient for that. SPY is kind of stuck between 439 and like 442, so it's very tight. We had this like dropped in a really nice pump. I was talking about a potential pump coming to it in the morning. It actually dumped first and then got the pump before it started slowing down to trade sideways. It is just stuck going back and forth and back and forth. The last few hours have just been trading sideways, not really doing much. It's going to likely continue to remain sideways for another couple of hours before we get one more push up possibly at the end of the day. But I just want to note that it's not doing much, and we're going to see a much bigger move going into tomorrow. So it's going to be very tight. Be well aware of this. Be very careful when trading it. I don't really expect too much for the remainder of the day, just lots of boring sideways price action around the 440 area. And then we're just going to have to wait and see how it moves after that. What's holding it up right now would be around this like 50 EMA. We could also bring up their VWAP chart right over here. So VWAP is just below it. So VWAP is acting as support as well around 440.5. So just watching these levels carefully, watch VWAP and watch your 50 EMA. It's just trading sideways, not really doing much. It's going to be very boring for another couple of hours. During power hour, during the last hour, it could try to get a bounce. It could try to pump a little bit because the market is very optimistic. The economic optimism report was quite nice, and inflationary expectations from consumers. The surveys are coming out, and people are expecting lower inflation. So there's a good chance that the market could try to like pump a little bit at the very end, but I'm not really expecting it to be that great. I would rather just be patient and then wait for how this thing ends up going. All right. So for SPY, if you want to hold anything overnight on any options, it's risky. Be aware of the risk. If you know what you're doing, go ahead, play however you want. But if you don't know what you're doing, be very careful. And I would only hold like a very small position, nothing too massive overnight. Not financial advice, by the way. Apple's also very similar to Tesla, got this sell off before it formed like a double top and then came down. And now it's trying to test this like 187 support. If that fails, let's watch 186.5. I don't think it's going to tank that hard. I'm just seeing lots of sideways price action as well with it. But it is looking a little bit weak compared to the market. Not really doing much. For the triple Q, this thing came down to 364.62, 7 cents away from our support, which I had listed right here. Then it pumped up, got rejected off 367.25, came right back down to 366, bounced, and came very close to our next resistance at 368. So these lines are very close. You guys see how this support and resistance zone over here is just holding up very nicely. You could see how it's bouncing off of them very, very clearly. And you could quite clearly see how support and resistance is dictating the QQQ. So now, at least over the last like 2 hours, this thing has just been trading sideways, going back and forth, not really doing anything. It's going to likely remain in this trend, just doing the whole back and forth thing. Maybe get one last pump at the end, but that's about all I'm seeing. Very, very boring price action. Not a whole lot's going to be expected for the majority of the day now for the QQQ. And we're going to see what happens with tech earnings coming out over the next couple of weeks. That's going to dictate where the NASDAQ goes. And finally, for the short term, we have CPI, which is going to cause a move to either the upside or the downside, possibly the upside. That's what I'm leaning more towards. But just to be safe, don't just take my word for it because I don't really know what the future is going to hold. It's just what my like educated presumption would be based off this trend on CPI that I just showed you like right here. So the odds do favor a decent CPI, right? But just to be safe, it is risky to play this. So be well aware of that and do what you have to do. All right. So thank you for listening. Have a great day, everyone. This is your last chance to be securing those profits if you want to do so. If not, it's your own choice, your own portfolio. I want the best for you all. Thank you for listening. Tesla and the market to the moon as the long term is very bright. And peace out.